1700s. So why did George Washington pick this area? Do I have anyone else who wants to hear? Well, pretty easy, pretty specifically, and it wasn't rocket science why we call this West Point. The westernmost bank, the westernmost point, has very high ground, very prominent ground. And at that point, the river's very narrow. It literally makes an S-shaped turn. We're going to drive by with the bus. I'm going to point out where the artillery is. So they put artillery all through the rocks because the ships would have to slow down to maneuver that S-shaped turn. Very difficult to maneuver. So that was there. And then see where that red flag is? There's fortifications there as well. And that's where this gentleman asked me about the Great Chain. They stretched the Great Chain from Constitution Island all the way across. They floated it on logs, 1,700 feet long. It weighed 65 tons, and it took 270 men to stretch it, or I should say float it. And they would bring up the Great Chain during the winter because it would have frozen at the bottom, and that was another, bottom of the river, another barrier for those British ships. So we were all set, and then if the British came by land, up that way is Fort Putnam. So we were ready by land, we were ready by sea. But what happened? You probably know this. Benedict Arnold happened. Actually, Benedict Arnold was in charge. This was called Fort Arnold back in the Revolutionary War era, and he was right under George Washington, and he was passed over for a promotion. George Washington did not trust him, and also his wife was a British loyalist, and he was in debt. He needed money. He was in a great deal of debt, so he sold the plans of our West Point to the British for 30,000 pounds. Luckily, if you remember way back from Revolutionary War history, in Tarrytown, New York, Major John Andre had those plans hidden in his boot, and the militia were robbing him. They didn't even realize what they had, and they returned the plans back to George Washington during the Revolutionary War days, and the British never came through. They knew where all the artillery was in the rocks. They knew about the Great Chain, so they didn't challenge it. They didn't come through here. However, Benedict Arnold went down in history as the greatest traitor in American history.
It's amazing this corruption started that early. I mean, now it's, I mean, not to interfere or anything, but on account of all the crookedness going on, it's been going on for a long time. Amazing.
So he was despised by Congress. They changed the name from Fort Arnold to Fort Clinton. Now, the only thing we have here that says Benedict Arnold really doesn't even say his name. In the old Cadet Chapel, we have all Revolutionary War generals have beautiful plaques. They took Benedict Arnold's name and they etched it out on purpose. And they also took out his birthday too, as if he never existed. They just kept his rank and not his death. He went back to England. He died a poor man. And Major John Andre was hung by George Washington. Wouldn't hear of it, and he was hung. And he's buried underneath Westminster Abbey as a hero. So that's what happened to them. But again, we were not challenged after 1777. The British did overrun the first Great Chain in 1777, which now is present-day Bear Mountain. So that's a little Revolutionary War history.